Hi guys, and welcome back to v-bugz Restoration. We've got a new video for you today. We've got sway-away adjusters installed in this front beam, and we're going to install a brand new set in this front beam. This one's mine, this one's Phil's, this one's done years ago, and I can't remember how I did it.
I've never done one before. Gaz has done one and he can't remember how exactly he did it. We've watched a few YouTube videos on the process of doing it, so we're going to give it a go at doing it today. You've got to do one tube at a time, so if you cut both, obviously you've got lost your measurement and everything. We're going to talk through the process slowly. It'll be a mixture of mostly me, but Gareth will be helping as well.
Definitely a video for beginners. We're going to figure it out, and we're going to try to sort of walk you through it as we figure it out. Hopefully by the end of the video you'll be able to do it too.
If you don't want to purchase anything and you want your car lowering, all you've got to do is cut this centre section out here. It's about ½ an inch, but if you cut about 50mm out, you allow so you don't cut into the actual thing, and you want to rotate the tubing round. It's about 5mm if you do it for 2 inches.
We can show you that quote more closely once we've cut out this section.
Yeah, for what you're looking for inside and that.
So let's start talking through the steps that we're going to take before we cut anything, because there's a bit of prep work to do. Yesterday
we did a few repairs. We haven't videoed it. I had the same issues with the bottom of my beam on both sides. We haven't gone to as much detail as Gareth did with his. It's just a quick repair.
But if you want to see how to get your front beam to this stage, we put up a video this morning.
Yeah.
So if you want to check that video out,
so
that'll show you how to strip it down and get it ready.
Before you cut anything out of the steel, you need to make sure you get a nice straight line here. And then if you're not using the adjusters, you need to do 2 marks, one for the distance you're going to rotate. So you do your first mark and then your second mark, and then you're literally rotating your first line to your second line, then re-welding it in once you've got your measurement. We're not doing that because we've got the adjusters.
We can show that though, can't we?
Yeah, we can briefly show that. What we're doing here is because we are rotating this, we need to set that to the standard ride height, which is where we're going to set the top height is going to be the standard ride height. So that bolt there needs to line up where that one is. So when we scribe through here, we'll scribe that across to here. Right, we're going to talk you through how to set up the adjustable lowering setup, and then once we've talked you through that and welded this first one in, we'll then explain with the offcut how to set up if you don't want to do the lowering kit and you just want it permanently set at whatever stance you prefer. It was a little bit head racking for me because I've never set this up before. I was just having a quick look with Gareth, and we've just worked it out between the two of us. You've got this hole here is where your locking nut goes through, or your locking bolt, and then that's interlocked with another nut over the top. That goes through into your torsion bar and holds the torsion bar in place. So, I'll pick it up in a sec. So you've got a locking bolt inside here that does that job, and then you've got one that adjusts it. So this is off the other one. You've got 2 bolt holes here, and you've got the grub screw goes in one of them, which I've set it as the opposite one to that, which I'll explain why I've done that in a second. So then you've got the other one, and that's basically inside there. You've got the 2 of them. So that is your highest point of your suspension, and then as you wind this bolt down, you lower the vehicle, right? So when you've got it set up at your highest point, you need to then get a square and run your square from that line nice and square up there. It's going to be quite difficult to do, but then once you've got a square line, scribe it and then flip it onto its side and square it that way, and then once you've done that, you're ready to mark your line directly across the centre of the thread of there. So what I mean by that is, along there you need to get a square line, but once you've got a nice square line along there, you can then make your marks for your width. Use the Jubilee clip to scribe round both of them, cut out the section, and then this should slot into place, and then the line that you've scribed across the front should line up with the line you scribed across there, and that'll give you standard ride height at the top adjuster.
That gives you about 4 inch lower, I think.
Oh, is it 4 inches? Yeah. So once this is set in place, the highest point will be highest, and then the lowest point should be around a 4 inch drop. I'm literally figuring this out as I go along, so you'll be learning with me, and hopefully by the time it's all done it'll look really good. So we're going to have a bit of a practice on the first one. We're still going to video it all, and once we're confident, we'll keep videoing the process, and hopefully we don't miss anything. And if we miss anything in the video and you want to know how we did it, just comment at the bottom and we'll either do a little video on what we missed, or we'll just leave you a comment if it's something simple we can explain. We're going to try our best to be as clear and possible as we can. We've looked on YouTube and there's people who are showing you how to fit them, but they're not showing you how to work out where you need to set everything up. And that was the biggest thing I was having an issue with, was I was going to originally set this to there, so that, but it would have made it a lot higher and you'd have probably wound down to standard height. So it's a lot of working it out, but hopefully we'll get there. Okay, so to get your scored marker right across here, the easiest way I found of getting a straight edge is these will be flush from factory. So I've gone a straight edge across there and scored a line along there, and then I've measured 15mm, brings me to the centre of the hole here, so I put a mark at 15mm here, and from that line that we scribed before to 15mm here. Then I took the square because the rule didn't fit. If you've got a shorter ruler you can use that, and then I've matched the two lines up and scored straight across, and we have a nice even line all the way across the centre of the thread there for the locking grub screw. So as I said before, that will be standard ride height, which will line up with the grub screw inside there at standard ride height. I followed that across and scored it along the line there, which will line up the line on here to the line on here when we cut out and replace that in there. And then as we adjust down, that will lower the car, and then adjust back up, that will high the car back up to standard ride height. Okay, so now we've got our straight lines. We're going to do our measurement for cutting out the piece for the adjuster to go in. The adjuster measures at 50mm across, so I'm going to cut it about 52mm to allow for a little bit of weld and to slot it in as well. So for 52 we want to go 26mm either side of the line. So I'll do it across the centre of the hole there, 26, and then same this side, 26. And then to get a nice square line all the way around, you just want to move your Jubilee clip over. So once you get in snug, just to make sure you're square, just keep moving it very slightly just to make sure. The Jubilee clip's a flat surface being pulled round flat, so it'll stay perfectly true all the way around. The size of the Jubilee clip that we're using is 40 to 60mm, so if you don't have a stockpile of Jubilee clips like myself and Gareth do, and you want to buy one, they're about 25p each or 50p each, and it's a 40 to 60mm to go around. So once you're happy you've got it square, just tighten it up to make sure it doesn't move. I've got my mark right on the edge of the Jubilee clip, so I'm just going to score right round the Jubilee.
To be honest, Phil, this is probably more professional than when I did mine.
Okay, and then just slacken that back off and move it over to your other mark, and again just gently tighten it a little bit at a time, making sure it's flat and smooth on the bar. Tighten it all the way up, and then we've got the line just there, so we're going to score it again. And again, this does still apply if you're just cutting out the original tube and twisting it round.
This is all the same process.
Yeah, all the same process. You cut out exactly the same piece, and now we've got that marked up, we can take this Jubilee clip completely off. Just push it to the side for a second, but
slide off the tube once it's cut.
Yeah. If you are doing the cutting the tube and twisting it, these two marks here aren't the measurement for twisting it. These are just I rested the flat edge across there like you see, and then measured up 15mm. There is other YouTube videos out there on how to set this bit up, but it's basically cutting it out and twisting it.
I mean, you could use that mark, but you'd get a 7.5.
Yeah, you'd get a very big drop, which would be far too much. Yeah. So I would probably go about 5, maybe 6 or 7mm.
And that would give you 2 to 3 inches.
Yeah, that'll be 2 to 3 inches of drop. That's not an exact measurement, so if you do it and you're not happy with it, don't blame us for it. We are just taking a rough guess. We're not doing it that way. This is why we've bought the sway away adjusters, because if it is too much we can go back up.
You can fine tune it down to where you want.
And that's why we've set it at standard ride height for the highest point, because then you can't go wrong. If you don't like it, you go straight back to where it was. So next step on this now is cutting nice and straight. You want to keep your cut to the inside edge of the line, because if you cut to the outside edge you'll put this in and it'll be too much of a rattle inside there.
Your slit disc is generally 1mm.
Yeah, so if you cut to the inside edge of the line, you don't want to leave the line on, you just want to be cutting along it, if you get me. What I'll do is I'll start cutting through now, and then I'll stop and Gaz can come in and have a look with the camera at what I mean. So, I've cut through both, as you can see. I'm probably going a little bit off track there, but it's like millimetres. Well, not even a millimetre, so I'm going to just come back across a little bit, but I'm trying to keep it as straight as I can. I'm not going to just cut across. We can always, if you cut too far in, you can always just grind a little bit away. Just make sure you leave your line on so you can go up to it.
So if you're welding adjusters are not just turning, this bit is waste. So if you're grinding, just err on the side of caution, and if you think you're going off, try to go into the waste, not into your turn.
If you are reusing this, you want to try and keep it a continuous cut but square, because you don't want to be cutting from the top and working your way straight through and then come out the other side and complete up, because then you will have to put sway-away adjusters in.
Yeah, follow your line round, so don't try to cut through all from one place.
Cut a bit, and then even like I've just done, I've come around to the other side and I'm going to cut round this bit, then flip the axle back over and cut round the line. Take your time. I'm not overly cautious because this is going to bin, and I can do a little bit of infilling with the thing, or take a bit more out if I've not took enough out. So for me, this being slightly too short and I have to go wider or something, that isn't a major issue because I'm not reusing this bit, I'm replacing it. Okay, so we're just going to carry on. We've moved around the other side to make sure that we don't reach over and either hurt ourselves with the grinder. Remember guys, I wear glasses so I can't get safety goggles on anyway, but safety goggles, good ventilation in the garage. I haven't got the proper gloves on, but you should have really something on your hands to stop you from, if you slip and catch hand. Welding gloves are probably the best because they take a bit more of a hammering. I'll continue to cut round, flip it, and then we'll get it out and then we'll weld the first one in and show you. Okay, I'm just going to flip the axle over now, preferably not grab the hot bit because that will hurt.
Good advice there.
Just grabbed it again. It's kind of my signature move, that, isn't it, Gary?
Oh yeah. Like you're attracted to red hot things.
I tend to grab the hot stuff a lot. I like.
Like Phil said, if you're using the sway-away beam adjusters, get your lines as close as possible, but don't be too worried if it's not perfect. If you're welding this part in, back in and just turning it, get it as close as you possibly can. It'll make it so much easier to put it back in after.
Hopefully once this is cut out we should just be able to slot the beam adjuster in. If it's too tight I can just get a grinding disc and just take it in millimetres off at a time.
We will be beveling the edges.
We are going to have to, like, where they weld onto the edges, you like 40, not 45, but put a slight V in on this piece and on the other piece all the way round. It just helps for when you're welding, it penetrates the weld right through the steel. With this being a suspension component, you want to make sure it's a very good weld.
Especially if you're not using a professional grade welder.
Yeah, we've got two welders here. We've got an industrial one and like a buy-it-yourself one. Sorry, a do-it-yourself one. I reckon the do-it-yourself one could probably just about do it on the highest setting, but why take the risk with the...
This bigger one is still not quite a professional one, but it's a Sealy 195 MIG. and this small one is a Sealy 150.
Yeah, the 150 would probably do it, but we're not going to take the risk with we've got the big one to hand, so we're going to use that one as well. So I'll finish cutting this up now, and hopefully the beam adjuster will just slot right in. In this tube, you've basically got one of them that's welded to the inside of the tube. Basically, where's our little marks that we had before? There's our marks. So we've got that tube, and as I was saying before, that will be our lowest setting there, the highest setting there. So we've literally, that bolt hole there that you can see is basically lining up with that one there. So we rotate it, and that's how we get our lower. Because it
turns the whole spring pack inside the tube.
The whole spring pack is that shape, and it goes through the tubes and into the trailing arm, the ball joint trailing arms. So as you are at ride height, standard height is.
You're holding up to it.
So you get standard height. So it's not a bad fit to be fair. As you adjust it, you go full
ride height.
Full ride height, and then it's lowered.
Fully lowered.
So as you adjust that up and down, your arms are doing this. But obviously you've got top and bottom, which control the top and the bottom of the sway. So that's what we're going for. We're not quite a perfect fit, just need to do a bit of grinding.
That's perfect though, because we can use a grinder to.
Yeah, that taking less out. I mean, not too like you don't want to take 5 mil less, because it'll take you ages grinding it away. But even that, you could still reuse that, because you could just take a little bit more out and fill it with weld.
So when you lower it this way, this static lower way, you would take this and you would just rotate it slightly
down, like 5 mil if that.
Rotate it slightly down, and you would weld it back in.
So that's the original stock height where the lines match up there. So if you're lowering this now, you've got the top of the beam here, this is the bottom tube, and you turn probably about that much to get about 2 inches to 4 inches worth of drop. Not exact measurements, we don't know, we've not worked it out within the math, but there is people on YouTube that show you how to work it out. But this bolt hole there at the front, when this is at the highest setting, is directly in front, so we've set it up so that is going in at stock height there.
So we want our highest point to be stock height.
And then lowest point to be should be 4 inches. So
we worked out on the one that's done, we fitted that, and that worked out to be about 4 inches.
Yeah, about 4 inches worth of drop. So you can go stock 1 inch, 2 inches, 3 inches, 4 inches. So you've got plenty of a choice. So
obviously you do it to both beams, so you'll need a pair of sway weight.
Yeah, they are sold individually, which I do think is a bit silly, because you do need two. So you couldn't just do one. Well, you could, but you couldn't adjust it, so it'd be pointless. You could put one in if you wanted to. So what my next process is going to be, I'm going to flip the axle, grind it until that fits in, like not loosely, but so it fits in without having to hit things. Once it's in and it's sliding in nice and thingy, we've got a tool we made this morning to hold it in place. I'm going to cut the V in. I'll go back around this way.
This is the little homemade tool, which is just two pieces of box section welded together, so that they've both got there's two parallel lines.
Yeah, the better option would be to have a piece of angle iron, either 1 inch or 2 inch angle iron.
Yeah, standard piece of angle iron works perfect.
Yeah, literally all I did to make this was I cut the 2 pieces of box section so they fit in between, put them in with big Jubilee clips round, and then tack welded them from underneath just to hold them together. And that is literally, as that's set, obviously it won't fit in now because it's not cut right, but it'll hold the tube all perfectly parallel with each other. So,
well, it's worth noting that one of the tubes is slightly bigger than the other, so that will only work on the tube that's the same diameter.
Yeah, but it's still, it holds it roughly for you, and then you can just literally, if you've got welding gloves, hold it while you tack it into place. But if you just do small tacks, and then you can take your clamps off and check round to make sure you've got it the same all the way around. So now I'm just going to neaten the edges up a little bit and keep grinding it until this just slides in nice and freely. And then once I've got that, I'll just gently taper back the edge a little bit so that we can get a nice penetrating weld inside there. Shade more off there.
Yeah, if you remember, if you take off a little bit at a time and try it, and take a little bit more and try it, and a little bit more and try it, you'll get a perfect fit.
You can always take more off, you can't add it, well, you can add it back with a welder, but it's a lot more difficult. So, we're close with it fitting. I mean, the line's coming across. I don't know if you can make out the line there. Ignore this.
We can see that line.
Ignore this first, when I made a mistake. But we've just got to take a bit more material out of here and here to twist the adjuster back.
The reason we're doing one at a time is because it'll help keep the beam straight.
Keeps the beam straight, and it stops you from losing length and gaining length, and so that's why we're doing it one at a time.
That's looking promising.
It's definitely fitting better, but we're still not quite perfectly straight. I just want to take a shade more off. But we're very close.
The straighter and closer you can get this, the better it's going to be.
Yeah. But I've literally just got to take a little bit more off here. This edge is okay, we've got a gap here,
I
but
can see really clearly in the camera that your line is pretty much straight. It's just this corner needs to come back a bit, doesn't it?
I don't think it's that corner. I think it seems to be. I don't think I actually need to take any more off.
Yeah,
I think I'm just being OCD.
There's your tool. See if it lines up.
This is a slightly narrower bar.
Yeah. Started on a difficult one.
Yeah. I think I just need to take a smidges more off these two edges, and then I should be there. If I can make it a bit
slab. You'll probably get that with your chamfering, won't you?
Eh?
You'll probably get that when you cut the angle in, won't you?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. I'll just
So
take
when we say cut an angle in, what we're talking about is taking this
yeah,
off.
do you want me to do a test patch and I can show them what we need?
We're going to take this corner off.
Yeah. Ready? If you want to come back in, Gareth. What we mean by chamfering it off, if you look there, there's a distinctive groove there. I think we're only going to need to do one side, aren't we? If we do, we should get enough heat in between that gap to, if you open that side up as well on the actual adjuster, giving it a V.
I'd probably do both sides.
There's a very slight chamfer on there, but with that, if I do that kind of a V all round, I reckon that would be enough of a gap to get a decent weld in. So if you can see we're going to leave the adjuster because it's got a slight taper on the edge already. We're just going to taper the edge of both tubes all the way around, and then that will give us enough to get the weld in and build out the weld.
Because you don't want to be welding and just get into the very surface of the
There's no point butting that up to there and just welding across there, because you'll just weld the top layer of metal to the top layer of metal. You need to weld the metal all the way through. So unless you're a very experienced welder who can turn the heat right up and get through without misshaping all the tubes, I personally, even if you're a good welder, would taper it back a little bit. It ain't going to be a hero for no one if you're going down the road and it falls apart.
It'd be really embarrassing to pull up to a show when your axle breaks in half.
Yeah. So I'm going to taper this all the way around on both edges, finalise the fitment, and then once we've got that, we'll start videoing again.
If you want to save some time, take that off before you weld the new one.
So we'll turn the cameras off now. We're going to chamfer both edges, get pretty much ready to start tacking in place. But before we start welding, we'll show you how to fit this and what it's for. So we'll get back to you in a minute. Right, so this line is, if you remember, it goes across the centre of the original hole for the locking grommet, and we've got that locking grommet inside there, which lines up with this top line we've made here. So the top line goes in line with that line there, and then we can weld it up in place. To assist us with holding it whilst we're welding, because we haven't got a bazillion hands, I made this bracket earlier that just sits underneath. We still have to hold it and adjust it a slight bit, but it's pretty much got us there. And to hold that in place, I'm going to put these Jubilee clips around. I'll fit these Jubilee clips now with the steel in, and then just like so, we're done. That was nice and quick. So, as I said before, this tube is slightly smaller than the original tube, so I've cut a little strand of metal and I'm going to slot it in both sides, and hopefully you might see it was an old Jubilee clip now as well. that should pack me up to the right sort of height for welding it in place.
Yeah, and you're doing that because the bottom tube is bigger than the top tube.
So
right.
now that works out pretty perfect. I can run my fingers across the edge of the tube, and it feels like the same. So it's not an exact measurement, and I'm sorry guys, it's not perfect, but that's showing to me that it's sort of flush all the way around the same.
Yeah, the thing is, this top tube is about 1/8 of an inch smaller than the bottom tube.
And they've based both clamps off the bottom tube.
The sway adjusters are all the smaller size.
So I've got the same sort of gap there now. I'm going to obviously line my line up so we're in the right place for ride height. So we're that is now standard ride height at the top setting of the adjuster. We've got the line following across. I'm going to quickly tack weld that in place, and then before I commit to anything, tack it both sides, take the Jubilee clips off from the bracket and feel around the bottom where I can't feel now, just to confirm that it's all flush.
After it's cooled down.
Obviously after it's cooled down, yeah.
And we have, in between shots here, we've been checking and we've been double checking and triple checking.
Because there's nothing you want more than to weld it up on camera wrong. So we have double checked.
Not when there's proof.
Yeah, but the only real way of knowing for definite if we've done a good job or not is when we build the cars back up and install the front beam.
Yeah.
Which ain't going to be for like 6 to 7 months or maybe even longer. So this is the best we can get. We're going off Gaz's, which we know fits and it works to the right height that we want, because Gaz has been drove well whilst it's been like that. So we're pretty happy with the way we're doing it. If you think we're doing something wrong, just comment below. If you like what you see, subscribe, because there'll be more useful tips and helpful trinkets and stuff that we're hoping to help people along the way. We have missed a lot of what we've already done on the cars so far, so if there's anything we've already done that you want any help with, just comment below or on any of our other videos, and we'll try and do like a tutorial or a quick run through, or just how we did it if there was anything we found that was awkward. So right, I'm just going to tack it in first of all and make sure that it's all plumb by removing the Jubilee clips and the beetle bracket.
When you weld it after you've done your tacks, when you actually need to weld it in, don't do the spots.
No, constant, yeah.
Right round.
So that's just tack welded in place now. I'm going to remove the Jubilee clips so that we can see if we need to adjust it anymore, because we can run the 1mm cutting blade through the tack welds and just readjust everything. So I'm not going to feel it with my hands because it's obviously hot. The welding gloves.
You could use your small straight edge to.
Yeah, to be honest with you guys, I don't think we're far off there. Yeah, we're plumb all the way around. So we've got, now at the minute, we've got a nice plumb line. It's not flush with the surface because this tube's slightly narrow, so you've got a little step down on both sides, but it's about the same all the way around, so I'm quite happy to weld that up. Would you like to check, Gareth, and see what you think?
So I'm just going to use this straight edge just to check Phil's handiwork.
I actually check the bottom. What's the bottom like? It's not bad.
It's not bad.
It's livable with, isn't it?
Yeah, and the gap's pretty.
Is it even?
It's pretty even right the way across.
I couldn't have got much better. That little box section tube, that's literally all we did. Buttered the corners up, Jubilee clipped them on, I flipped the axe and I put some tack welds to hold it together.
But we only did that because we didn't have a piece of angle iron.
Yeah, angle iron would be so much better. And then obviously I got that pretty much spot on with these. It was just an old Jubilee clip I cut and put 2 little shims there to pack up these tubing a little bit.
Purely because the sway away just is slightly smaller than the tube on the bottom.
So I'm going to weld this all up now. Guys will video it and then we'll crack on with the second one and get it all done, and then it'll be ready for the next couple of days. We're going to finish the wire wheeling off, throught on them all, and then primer them, paint them, but also we've got the floor pans that are almost done, so we're going to try and paint them all at once, so you won't see the painting today. We're getting good penetration around the V where we've grooved round back in a V shape to get a nice deep weld right through. So I'll continue welding right round, and then that'll end this part of the video. But we will leave the camera rolling, and whilst we cut that, we won't be stopping and doing a tutorial on that part. It'll just be getting it done because we're getting late now. It's I'll clean it up for the sake of me, because I'm painting it and I like it to look pretty.
I've got to be honest, that's a tidy weld than was on mine before I cleaned it up.
So me and Gaz are going to work as a team on the next one, get it done a bit quicker, and then we'll just leave the camera rolling for you to come along with us. Okay then, Gareth's cut it out, he's ground the V out, he's installed it in place with the line, corresponding with the line.
We checked and we're happy with it.
Yeah, we've checked all round, it's the same, it's got a slight, the beam adjuster is slightly narrower than the actual tubing. Not a big issue, we've got the same lip all the way round, nice and even.
They appear to be sitting in roughly the same place.
Yeah, they pretty much look the same. Both adjusters are still working, so he's going to seam weld that right the way round now. We'll quickly clean it up, throught on it so it's rust protected and ready for primer and paint.
I told you I'll teach you to weld one day if you want.
Don't be foolish like me and Gareth usually do, and grab it when it's still hot by mistake.
Sorry,
Yeah.
you and Gareth?
Right, I'll tell you about me. Give it a chance to cool down. What the process for this is now is let it cool, finish installing the rest of the adjuster. We'll go through that with you, like the adjuster plate and stuff like that, and the other grommets and stuff.
And don't be tempted to spray water on it and anything to cool it down,
No.
because you'll harden the metal.
So this one's already cooled down, so I'll just do a quick run through with Gaz now.
I'll put this glove over here to stop Phil from
Touching it, because I have a habit of doing that. Yeah. So the adjusters are all welded in. The last bits to do now, which are just seconds or minutes, is just you slide that with a rounded edge there, just over that nut that's sticking through.
Is that the big end to the bottom or the top?
The big end to the bottom. What you obviously have to do first is I'm only putting it together temporarily to make sure I don't lose any of the bits. When we come to put the torsion arms in, we're going to have to take this out and gently rotate that round to the original grub screw that we lined up for the standard ride height. Because when the bars come through, there's a notch in the bars that you tighten the grub screw into. Then you rotate it back round, and then you put your thread into the thing, which you can actually tighten down into the torsion bars and to make sure it's locked in place. So once you've tightened that down, then you're sliding that over so the fat end goes to the bottom where the bolt is, and then a little nut on top of there which will hold that in place, and then that'll give you adjustment. And then once you've set your adjustment with the other threaded bar that goes in there, you leave this in once you've set the adjuster, because it will slip down if you take it back out. So you slot that one in, and that one, as it tweaks up, as you can see, adjusts that. I mean, there is an Allen key, it'll probably make it easier. So you tighten that up, and that's your lower in your car there. And once you've got it to a position you're happy with, take that off there.
So that's at stock ride height now, isn't it?
Stock ride, so all the way screwed down all the way is stock ride height there. So if you want to leave it stock ride height, which you obviously don't because you've done this, but you've got the option. Say you decide you want to go lower, slacken the nut off. You obviously jack it up, you don't do it under pressure. So that's probably about halfway, so that'll probably be about 2 inches. And then once you've set the height, you get a spanner with the, I'm trying to do this with my hands out the way. Hold the one that you've set the ride height with still, tighten that down, nip it with a spanner, but hold it with an Allen key. If you nip that with a spanner, you can turn both, and it might actually just leave it loose. So like that now, the nut's gone tight, but that's still adjusting. So
when we put these back on the car and when we set them up, we'll probably do a video on adjusting them to the right height.
Yeah.
Because obviously the beams, they're not together at the minute, so we can't really show that.
I mean, you've got to refit new ball. I've got to refit new ball joints. We've got to paint everything, clean everything up. There'll be maybe a video on cleaning up, but it won't be an in-depth one because
some of the bits for mine are already down here ready to go back in. But I have a bit of work left to do on my beam. They're not in yet. I need to replace one of the bearings.
So same again. That over there. Everything's still moving, which is good. That's very hot. I just touched that. See?
Told you.
Yeah, I always do. Always do. Probably shouldn't be doing this right now because it's still hot. But just tighten everything up.
So if you guys are worried about doing this, rest assured, if Phil can do it,
and this is the first. That's a bit cheeky. This is the first time I've ever done this, and it probably shows in the video. It might not show in the video, but I'm pretty happy with the overall end product. I'll probably leave it off actually until I've cleaned off the welds.
Melt the aluminium.
Yeah. So I'm happy with that. Going to clean the welds up, and then we'll end up the video. Okay, guys. So for the beam adjustment installation,
Sway away adjustments.
just a quick rundown of what tools we've used.
We have a Sealy 195 MIG welder, running mixed argon CO2 gas. We've got grinders. Obviously you only need one grinder, but we have two, so we've used them both. One with a cutting disc, one with a grinding disc. These are 1mm metal cutting discs, and these are 5mm metal grinding discs. So we use those to cut the beam, and we use this to
clean the welds off.
Yeah, bevel the edges and clean the welds off. Yeah. This is a small rule that Phil
made today, purposely for the job.
Just because it's far easier to measure between the two uprights on the beam.
Yeah.
A pencil and a scribe.
Which was just a pick out of a pick set.
Yeah, just for marking. A wire brush for cleaning things up. A square for marking our beam, along with an assortment of Jubilee clips for marking and lining.
Yeah, we gave you the measurements of the Jubilee clip that we used for to mark it square, but the Jubilee clips we used for the holding the inch by inch box section on was 60 by 80s,
and a 7mm.
Yeah, that
driver for
that is optional if you haven't got that sort of tool.
Or you can use a flathead if you've not.
Yeah. So we use a 7mm socket on a screwdriver just to make it easy. You can use a flathead, or you can use the flathead. We actually use that for something else, didn't we? So you do need a flathead as well.
Tape measure to wrap around the beam when you're measuring.
Yeah. We had an assortment of. We had a straight edge as well, for getting the straight line across the beam.
Grease for greasing the measure you're assembling.
Yeah. Would you want to go around that side? So we used multi-purpose grease for greasing the adjusters.
A little homemade tool for lining up.
Yeah. You can use angle iron for that as well, which would probably be better because you haven't got to weld it.
Yeah. A welding mask so we don't hurt our eyes.
Welding gloves too.
Welding gloves so we don't hurt our hands. It's like being in college, isn't it? Earmuffs.
To protect ears.
Yeah. A pair of goggles if, like us, we wear glasses, so we can't really use these.
What the glasses protect, Gareth?
Glasses protect our eyes. So, pair of goggles if you don't have glasses on, and for wiping up your grease.
Yeah, you could use an old rag if you don't have paper towel.
Or even kitchen roll.
Yeah.
So, is there anything you found particularly difficult, though?
It wasn't so much difficult. The thing that was the most awkward for me was getting the courage to cut in the first place.
It's really scary putting your front.
I was panicking a lot about that.
Especially when you spent the whole day yesterday doing repairing.
Yeah, I didn't want to have to spend all that repair work for it to go in the bin. If anyone is going to take on this challenge themselves, if you know how to weld and you're quite confident at cutting and fabricating, you'll manage it no problem.
A hint that I've been told but we didn't actually do is if you want to practice with your welder, you can just use these. Welding these, make sure your weld's going right the way through.
Yeah. What he means by that is to set your welder up to the right temperature, you don't want to be practicing as you're doing it on here. We had a rough idea of what penetration we'd need with this welder because Gaz has done his with that welder before.
I've had that welder for years and I know the settings.
Yeah. If you've only really welded sheet metal on cars and you've never turned your welder up to get power out of it, when you cut your first one out you'll notice it's like 5mm thick. So just clean it up get the welder out and run a weld across it, and then check the inside to make sure that it's, as it's glowing red, it's still glowing on the inside.
Yeah.
That's when you know you've got full penetration through the steel. This.
And if you don't have a good welder that'll get hot enough, you can always run it down to your local fabrication or steelworks, and they'll probably do it for you for not a lot.
So, summary?
Summary, it's not terribly difficult, but it takes a lot of confidence.
Yeah, and it's, if you take your time with the cutting, it's pretty simple to cut it. You can't really go wrong. I mean, if you're not sure of where these are, there's a groove right in the centre of the beam to show you where they are.
And check, and check, and every time you stop, check. Make sure that your lines line up, make sure your marks are in the right place.
Other than that, guys, it's just take your time and be careful and drive safe when you're done.